There needs to be something in the contract that says, look, if prices increase ridiculously, then we've got to be covered because we're producing a product for you. You know, you can't de-risk everything. And there's a whole thing in the industry about de-risking, but we're not gamblers. You know, there's enough problems in construction without having that as a problem as well. So it's something we need to kind of look as an industry and go, look, we're not able to gamble. And people do take on that gamble and they don't realise that the outcome is they're going to fail.
Hi, Gavin Coyle here again. I'm the Gaffer Podcast, and I've got a great guest today. Robin Hayhurst is in with us today, and Robin has a multitude of experience in terms of the construction industry, having been involved with his family business and then his own business, and he has a lot to tell us in terms of the ups and downs of his own personal journey in construction, but also where he's at today and how he's given back to the community. He's got his own podcast, Bust and Beyond, and we're going to get into some great discussion. How are you, Robin? How are you today?
I'm very well today, and I'm very pleased to be here.
It is Bust and Beyond, isn't it, the podcast?
It is, yes.
It's not Beyond and Bust, it's Bust and Beyond. So.
No. I came up with it. Actually, my daughter's helped me come up with the name. Something a bit different. We did a bit of a search to see if anyone else was doing it, and there doesn't seem to be a lot about the lessons learned from failure. And I think, when we started it, it was just about companies. It's not just for construction, it's for anyone, but it's also about personal failure.
Okay.
And I think, mental health has come into that a lot as well. And I just love doing it.
Yeah, I think we were very excited to get you on the podcast here today because we're trying to help people as well navigate the risks within business, and it's a commend you for doing that and giving back. But where was your construction story at the start? Like, where did you get into construction? Was it something that fell into your lap, or were you doing something different before, or was it always construction?
No, it's always, apart from a very, very short time when I wanted to be a member of the SAS or in the police force.
Oh my God.
I was kind of brought up on building sites.
Yeah.
My father started off as a carpenter, got himself qualified as a chartered builder, by accident started his own company, loved it as a developer and contractor, and I kind of ended up on his building sites.
Okay.
And I perhaps shouldn't say this, but driving dumpers, 4-ton dumpers at the age of 12. That kind of thing.
Not good.
No, not the right thing to do. But I loved it.
Yeah, and it was all housing development, was it, or mixed?
There's mixed. I mean, they did some commercial stuff. There used to be a company called was it Texas Do It? Texas Instruments and stuff like that. Used to
Yeah,
their
I remember them
stuff. It was. He did a mix, really.
So, in terms of the size of the scale of his business, would it have been in the tens of millions, or what kind of revenue was he doing?
It was doing about peak we did about 14 million, but he started in 1969.
Okay.
So he was doing a bit back then, and he was doing developments of up to about 60 houses.
So he's nothing to learn, and of course a great mentor for yourself then.
He was a fantastic mentor. Unfortunately, we lost him in 2021 due to COVID. But
Sorry to hear that.
he was an amazing mentor, and he was a very honest bloke.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of approached. He had a huge. He loved people, and he had huge faith in people.
Mm-hmm.
And he always kind of, when the planners kind of perhaps weren't that friendly or kind to us, he'd go, "Yeah, but there was one now."
Yeah,
He'd see it that way, that they knew they hadn't been, proper in their dealings, and and he had great confidence in that.
So he was basically taking everything from the greenfield right the way through to the sale.
Yeah.
So it was his projects that he was it his projects that he was doing with his own hard-earned cash and then flipping them, or?
It was, I mean, it was partly his own cash. He had, we used to bank with Barclays then, so Barclays used to fund it, and he had a best mate who had another development company who kept on kind of lending him money. And it's quite funny because he got a phone call one day from this guy who also became my mentor, because I was trained in his company.
Yeah.
And I think he said, how you doing for cash? He said, well, we've got plenty of cash, but we could always do more. He said, okay. And he sent him a check for hundreds of thousands of pounds. This is a long time ago,
Wow.
without even telling him it was appearing, and was invested in the business. So it was quite a good partnership.
He's obviously trusted your father. His word was good.
Yeah. I mean, always, I've never known my father to lie. He never did,
Yeah.
and he just kind of got on with it. And also he was really into product. The houses we built and the house he built, they were really good quality,
Brilliant.
and it was that niche market.
Okay, and was he a carpenter by trade himself? Yeah.
He
Okay.
was, yeah. So he started off on the side. I never had a trade. If any trade, I was into groundworks. I could bench a manhole, and I was quite good on kind of driving things. But no, I never had a trade. And I wish I had in some ways.
Yeah.
I'd come up through that route. So I kind of came up through labouring on site and then went to site management. But then I was taken on by my father's mate, the same guy that was lending the money, who had a much larger development company. And he was really kind to me. He trained me in everything. So architecture, surveying, buying, site management, engineering, everything,
So you got the full gamut.
which is just so rare now.
Wow. Yeah. No, I love you said that because I see people and they probably get pigeonholed into certain trades or into a certain sort of role. And it's not that they wanted probably to do that role. It's just that, construction's so brilliant at, getting access and having access to a job and access to money that some people just kind of say, well, if that's what you want me to do, that's what I'll do, rather than, hey, do you know what? I think I really like driving a dumper. Can I do that more? Whereas I suppose you got the full 360 or 180 of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I used to just say jack of all trades, but actually, I would now say jack of all trades, master of some.
Yeah.
So there are some things I'm really good at,
Yeah.
but I can do most things.
So what would you suggest is the good stuff that you're really good at?
I think I'm pretty good at management now. I'm pretty good at anything involving people, particularly in my new role.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm pretty good at. Project management, I'm pretty good at. But it's surprising if you look at how many elements go into building a building. And just concrete, you can take a degree in concrete.
Yeah.
You can take a degree in timber.
Yeah.
We're meant to know all that. It's
Yeah.
a lot to know, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Where do you see the construction industry at the moment in terms of what do we need to know in terms of trends? Is there a good is it healthy at the moment out there in terms
That's a
of
really good question. It's very mixed. So I think, I have a lot of clients who are running their own businesses out there, different sizes, different makeups, different branding. If they've got the branding right and they're good at what they do, they're actually busy at the moment.
okay?
So there's a lot of talk about recession. There's lots of clients I've got that are so busy they can't deal with the work. So,
Yeah,
is there a recession going on? Well, there is. There is a lot of people in the industry that aren't very good at what they do.
yeah,
And the nice thing about me, if I work with clients, they want to get better.
yeah,
So all my clients have that in common. They actually kind of strive to be better at what they do.
yeah. I think there's a lesson in that in itself that the people that are ahead, partly the reason I see that they're ahead is because they keep on reinvesting in themselves and their people in terms of raising the standards and going not just accepting the status quo of where they're at, that they're always pushing the envelope to try and be better as a company or as a brand. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, and I think they're the ones that are successful. And if you look at, some of my, the clients that are the most successful, we've moved them forward and said, look, you need to do a mentoring system inside your business. People don't just come in and get a boss; they need a mentor. You need to kind of invest in them and get them to move forward.
Yeah,
And when they start kind of put that into adverts and saying, look, we want people, we're forward thinking, you've got to be able to be mentored and in the future mentor other people,
yeah,
suddenly they're getting a lot of people applying to those adverts. So there's a shortage of people in the industry.
100%.
There's not if you approach them the right way and you're
Yeah.
offering what other people aren't offering.
Brilliant. And I definitely see there's value. If you imagine having a conversation with someone and saying, okay, we need a carpenter or whatever else, and you're going to get X, Y, and Z. But if you turn around to them and say, by the way, I'm going to do one-to-one coaching with you as well to bring you on to the next level because I see, management material in you. You mightn't be there yet, but we're going to put someone like yourself or whatever else as a sort of a person on the shoulder to guide people, and not enough of that is being done. I see in the construction, I see it at the executive level where people have already made it, and then there's a sort of maybe a polished effort to sort of steer people for the future of becoming a regional manager or regional director or whatever else. But I don't really see a one-to-one coaching mentorship sort of program for the guy on the tools, for example. Would that be fair to say, or have
I
you?
think you're right, and I mean, the reason I exist in my current role is generally people accept a mentor with a training. So if you're doing a sitting gilding, carpentry, or whatever, someone teaches you.
Yeah,
Beyond that, they don't get taught a lot.
yeah,
And also, these people often then go, right, I'm really good carpenter, or I'm really good plumber. Let's set up a business.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Who's taught them to do that?
Nobody.
Who's taught them to, so they don't go out and go, right, I've got to find someone to teach me how to run a business. They just get on and do it.
Yeah.
And that's why the failure rate's so high.
That's where the numbers starts to kick in
Yeah.
terms of, me and you had a conversation earlier on. Was it 4,000 companies gone to the wall? Like it's frightening, but it is down to sort of the fundamentals of business. People not probably having full understanding of what exactly it takes to run a business. Doesn't matter if it's a one man band. What would you say to that?
I totally agree with that. And I think that, the reason why so many companies went bust last year, the number was approaching 4,000. I don't know the exact number, but
Yeah,
was obviously we had this big increase in pricing on the labour side and on material side,
yeah,
and it caught a lot of people out. Whereas the companies that are clever, I've got a real strong feeling about this. The client ends up with a product. So if they've got a bit of timber and it's been priced £100, but it costs the builder £200 because the prices have gone up, the client still ends up with that bit of timber, and it's worth £200.
yeah,
And the contractor is then subsidising their product, which they end up with.
yeah.
That's just wrong.
It is fixed price contracts. Yeah, how are you a fan or not a fan? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that there needs to be something in the contract that says, look, if prices increase ridiculously,
Yeah,
then we've got to be covered because we're producing a product for you.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't de-risk everything, and there's a whole thing in the industry about de-risking, but we're not gamblers. There's
no,
enough problems in construction without having that as a problem as well.
yeah,
So it's something we need to kind of look at as an industry and go, look, we're not able to gamble, and people do take on that gamble and they don't realise that the outcome is
yeah,
they're going to fail.
yeah. Well, I like playing devil's advocate on it. You can easily see how the failure happens and how it's so catastrophic in terms of if I have a carpentry business and then the price of timber goes through the roof, which it did. Um, the principal contractor might not really care at all about what my status is with regards to timber. As far as they're concerned, it's your problem. And if you go broke, it's probably an advantage to the principal contractor because they've now got a load of work done for free, and they've got materials as well. So you know what I mean. That they didn't have to pay for. So it has to be fair across the whole stakeholder sort of collaboration together. Like, and I think there's probably a lot of fragmentation within the construction sector that there isn't enough of coming together with the trades to say, look, by the way, we're all signing up to fixed price contracts, but we're also saying that if inflation goes to a certain level, we're all agreeing that we're going to raise our rates to X, Y, and Z. Whereas all these fixed price contracts are individual to the companies, and there's no collective bargaining, if you like. Uh, um, I don't know if that'll ever get fixed.
Yeah, will it ever be fixed? It'd be nice if it was. I mean,
Utopia.
it's got to be a win-win.
Yeah,
I'm a huge believer in a win-win. It's one of my core values.
yeah,
So that there's a benefit to all parties.
yeah,
And I think the trouble is there's a lot of clients out there, not a huge amount, but there is enough that have an impact on the industry because they are trying to catch the
yeah,
contractor. And many contractors can't afford to use a legal route to kind of get the money back. They're in a weak position. And we've got to learn to not work for these people.
hmm
And it's difficult because at the moment we're all scrubbing around for work, but things are changing. there's less and less, and I kind of say this carefully, good contractors out there.
Yeah.
And if you're a good contractor, you're going to be in demand in the future.
Yeah, it's a governance issue really, as well as anything else. I would suggest, good corporate governance is looking after your supply chain and, working with your supply chain to, pick up the pieces where there might be gaps or where there might be risks. But I think it's a very utopian type of conversation that, how do we do this? Like, you see it on the ground, you see failures all the time. You've had failure yourself in your own business in the past. I don't think we can ever get away from failure, but maybe if we have people like yourself that are doing the coaching side of things to help people recognize where pitfalls are, like when you walk into a business, are you able to get a sense straight away, oh my God, this is not a good ship?
Yeah. Normally quite quickly, but you can't kind of put that on them.
Is that a hunch or is that
It's people. So
okay?
there's lots and lots of flags, red flags
Mhm.
that you look for. It's a strange industry. I speak to lots and lots of people on the phone. So often phone people up, how's it going?
Yeah,
Tell them more about your company, you know, not cold calling. They've contacted me in some form, but I have a chat to them. How many people never pick up the phone? How many people will never phone you back? How many people will be interested in your product, but then they'll just ghost you?
yeah,
They're running a business. They do that to their clients.
yeah,
They do that to other people. It's a red flag straight away
yeah.
that perhaps things aren't what they should be.
Is that a sort of self-protection mechanism that these people are using? That, like, they're probably not confident or fully confident in their own self, and therefore they're kind of holding their cards close to their chest and they're not really being open and transparent and vulnerable, maybe.
Kind of. And I think you kind of touched on the right kind of language. I think it's around the fact that they don't want to say no. They don't want to say, no, I don't want this.
Yeah,
But at the same time, they don't want to grasp the nettle and see the situation they're in and sort it out.
hmm,
And I find a lot of, particularly in our industry, a lot of people do the head in the sand approach.
yeah,
It'll go away, we'll work our way through it, rather than just quantifying what's wrong,
yeah,
working out what the hole in their cash flow is, working out what the problem in their team is,
yeah.
and then dealing with it. I've met people who literally would rather, I spoke to an electrician once, he would rather go bust and have 10 people lose their job than get rid of five.
Wow.
That's the mentality of some people.
Yeah, like I suppose the point I was trying to make was I think we're always going to have people failing. I don't think you'll ever solve that. That, as you rightly put it, people become a really good tradesperson first and a kind of maybe a poor or average business person then afterwards. And if they don't work on the business side of things, they're going to sort of set themselves up for failure. But you mentioned before we started the podcast about the peer-to-peer type learning, and I think there's so much powerful content and value in something like that. And just maybe if you want to discuss maybe those workshops and how you promote that peer-to-peer sharing.
I have fallen in love with doing workshops. I only done started this year, so I'm
Okay,
new to it. And I must say, I'll be very honest. I stood up in front of other people and had to do a kind of 6 hour kind of workshop,
presentation. Yeah,
and I was terrified.
yeah.
I've done 3 of them now, and I absolutely love them.
You don't come across as somebody that will be stuck for words now. In fairness, Robin.
Strangely enough, in my head, that imposter syndrome does kind of get in there. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I absolutely love them, not just because of what I impart on people, but in what they talk to each other about.
yeah,
And people come up to me afterwards and go, I just didn't realise everyone else had the same problems I've got.
yeah,
And it made them feel so good about it. So I'm definitely moving towards more in-person stuff,
yeah,
running more workshops. They're so powerful for people,
yeah.
and the networking around that is really, really important.
I was part of a peer-to-peer business institution, if you want to call it, but it was a global thing. And definitely the power of sharing and being open uh, is immeasurable in terms of, we're not going to go back to college. Or if we never went to college, it's probably not an option to go back anyway. So how do you get this information? The power, obviously podcasts are brilliant and you've got your podcast and we have this here. But like, how do you sort of get people to be motivated to share information in an open and safe environment? And I think that's what you've touched off, which is really powerful. And I noticed that in that business association that I was with, was there's this great energy of people actually really wanting people to succeed, wanting to give away that information, so they wanted you to succeed, because there was no real competition or whatever else within, or bias in the approach. And I think it's very powerful. Like, did you have any sort of stories to tell us in terms of, what kind of good stuff came out of those conversations?
Well, it's really just the feedback I get from people. But I mean, just to tell you why I'm so passionate about peer-to-peer learning,
Yeah.
about 3 years ago, I read a book called The Power of Peers by a guy called Leo Batari. And I thought, that's really interesting. And I'm kind of one of these people, like, I contact the author. Why not? He's in America. And he came back and went, let's have a chat.
Brilliant.
Jumped onto Zoom.
Fair play to you.
And I was chatting away to him. Lovely bloke. Really, he's written 3 or 4 books around peer to peer. And I said, look, I'm interested in peer to peer,
Yeah.
but I want to do it industry specific one. And he went, oh, not a lot of people do that because of competition and all that kind of stuff. But he said, no, it's a really good idea, and we had a chat about it. It was really helpful.
Yeah.
He was kind of embodying what he wrote about, which was being a peer and,
Yeah.
and supporting me in what I was doing as well.
Yeah.
And in fact, the thing I remember about him, when my father died, we had a little fund for the homeless charity. We thought, being a house builder, it might be a good one. And he put some money in the fund, which he was very kind of him. But it made me kind of realise that's the way to go. So I went straight into try and do peer-to-peer groups. That didn't work, really. People don't really get them in the industry. So the workshops are that kind of combination.
Okay.
And they really work. But it's taken a long time, years, to come up with them,
Yeah.
and to kind of have a series of workshops. But just going through the people that don't understand things. We had a fantastic workshop yesterday.
Yeah.
I hold them at the moment in Hitchin, Hertfordshire. And we were talking about cash flow forecasting. None of the companies actually have got cash flow forecasts
Go on.
that were at the workshop.
At all.
So they try and work out, can they get over the end of the month? That's the way they look at it. And the eureka moments around the room were amazing. But then they start talking to each other about it as well.
Yeah. So what? Sorry, but what are they doing in terms of cash flow forecasting if they're not?
It's a kind of guess. Well, cash flow forecast is a guess, but they're really interested in how much money is coming in this month, and how much money is going out this month. Will I make it?
Wow.
And they're doing that every month. You imagine the stress.
Oh my God.
So they're just not doing the planning bit
Yeah.
of running a business.
And I'm not even talking about. It should be 6 months minimum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we also spoke around markup and margin, the difference. That was an eye opener because they didn't know. They do now.
Yeah.
And strange enough, we had a guest speaker, fantastic bit of software that's just come out. He came along and spoke to everybody because that was a time saver, because they're all interested in using software to help them. But they haven't got time to find the people,
Yeah.
to speak to them individually, So bring someone to a group,
Yeah.
and his software talks about margin, whereas all contractors that I know work on markup. So straight away, we'd already been speaking about that in the morning. In the afternoon, we had this speaker, and straight away they're going,
Yeah.
but that's margin, that's not markup.
Brilliant conversation.
Yeah.
Gross profit, net profit. Where are you at?
Absolutely.
Average customer value. What do you mean
Yeah.
average customer value?
Yeah,
Oh,
well, we did gross and net, and we told the Richard Branson story around that.
Yeah.
So I won't repeat it, but everyone
Yeah.
knows it.
yeah.
But yeah, so all the simple stuff that perhaps you wouldn't think to ask.
Yeah, and I think, look, maybe people are a bit. I don't know if you can tell to the story better than me, but are people sort of just, I don't want people to. I don't want to expose myself that I don't know this stuff. Maybe is there a lack of confidence?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that what it is?
And,
Yeah.
and in a group, someone will ask the stupid question, right?
Yeah.
And everyone else will go, Yeah, I want to know the answer to that as well.
Yeah, I was afraid to say
Yeah.
it.
So that's why groups are so powerful.
Yeah,
And to do them in person as well, have nice lunch, you can chat.
yeah,
And then we do a network thing in the evening. So, network, anyone can come along to network evening. So, it's really about giving back to companies because, people buy from people. And I still think you can do all the advertising you like. You can join Checker Trade, you can do all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But the way you're going to get your work is to talk to other people. And there's contractors who have got work they can't take on,
yeah,
and they're quite willing to pass it on. There's contractors looking for subcontractors, and subcontractors looking for contractors, and they can't find each other.
yeah. Yeah, it's a network thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very powerful. Like, and is that something like how do you pick your titles and your teams for a workshop? So, it's all right saying, yeah, let's have a workshop, but like I'm sure there's certain topics that you need to zone in on. How did you get
yeah.
to the topics or
So I've
decide which
been
topics were
coaching
most
for
important?
about three and a half years now, and in that time, I've kind of zoned into the areas that people lack in. So, just an example, we've done three so far. So, the first one was really plan your 5 year business. So, let's work out where you're going to be in 5 years' time, not just in your head,
Yeah.
on paper, but detail. Who's going to be working for your company?
Hmm.
Where are you going to turn over? What kind of jobs are you going to be doing? What is your structure going to look like?
Yeah.
Who are you missing? Who are you going to have to employ in that time because they're missing from your structure? So, you work backwards.
Yeah.
So, you go there and you kind of work backwards to get there.
Re-engineer it. Yeah.
And that was a really good workshop, and it was really helpful to people. And then we did something which I think we get wrong in our industry a lot. So the next workshop was customer's journey. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love it.
So the customer's journey is about having a process in place to manage your customer
Yeah.
as you go through. And having a process in place saves you so much time. But also, our customers, they watch social media, they watch TV, grand designs. What do you know about grand designs? Every single project goes over budget.
Yeah.
You know, they're worried about cowboy builders.
Yeah.
They're worried, even professional clients, whether it's residential, private clients or professional, they're all the same. So to have a system in place that makes them sure that you're the professional, that you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
that you're managing their expectations, and that there's no shocks to your client.
Brilliant.
So it's just a simple system,
That's brilliant.
and it really works well. And so we had that, and then yesterday we did cash flow forecasting, cash control,
Yeah.
and that's very powerful as well. And the next workshop, which I'm doing next month, is going to be about construction processes. So quality control,
Yeah.
how to use Gantt charts, simple stuff which maybe you do, but no one's ever taught you to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The customer journey one really resonates with me because I can see people saying to themselves, actually, these are my customers, but they don't really fit into my model of who I want as my perfect customer. Or did you do an exercise with them in terms of, who their current customer base is and whether that avatar, if you like, fits into where they want to be within their 5 year plan?
Well, the 5 year plan one was that was part of the 5 year plan one. And the
Yeah,
5 year plan, we also looked at their team and analysed their team, which was an eye opener to them. So a little scoring system,
yeah,
core values. It's kind of stuff you find in a book called Traction.
yeah,
But it was people actually going, "Oh my God, I've been employing this guy for 3 years, and perhaps he shouldn't be with us."
yeah,
Just by sitting there for 10 minutes and
yeah,
following a system. But the customer's journey one, it really is about taking it from tender
yeah,
all the way to handover and having a process to follow. So, what are you going to tender? You know,
mm,
because you can't tender everything. And if your tender rate, say, is 1 in 10, you win 1 in 10. To get £1 million worth of work, you've got to quote £10 million worth of work.
yeah,
That's not good.
yeah,
The quickest way to get your tender rate up or your win rate up is to actually turn work away, which
yeah,
sounds so wrong.
yeah, yeah.
But if you're not going to win it anyway, why price it?
100%, 100%. And I heard a brilliant uh, antidote recently about people looking at the number of people and people within your business that are, the machine, if you like, parts of the clogs of the wheels of the machine, and then measuring the person to the turnover. So if we then split the revenue or the overall gross revenue of the business and bring it down per person to see how much each individual has a sort of value within the business. I thought that was a very powerful way of looking at things as well, so that you can probably say to yourself, well, maybe I might be overstaffed or understaffed, or maybe I'm doing really good here because I've got massive revenue, but I'm doing a really small team, and it just goes to show you how powerful my team is. And I think you're hitting on some massive topics there, and people are going to take away some great information, because I don't really see people doing, like, I see, this is the reason we wanted to get you on the podcast, because I see people doing coaching in the industry, but I don't see them doing it in such an organic, sort of measured way that you're doing it with these guys. I think it's very powerful what you have.
I think the thing is, I think my difference from most people out there is I've been digging child holes by hand and unloading bricks by. I've been on site.
Yeah,
I've been there and done it. And it just gives you a completely different approach that I know how it feels to go back at the end of the day and have to do your invoices and stuff like that.
yeah,
So you know it from that level. But also it's people. I mean, one of the things I've got wrong most in my life is people.
okay,
And just trying to kind of work out who shall we working with. It's like core values.
mm,
People don't understand core values. I didn't. 2005, I was introduced to core values. I remember it well. So I thought, great, we'll do something and put it on the website. I mean, because what a use are they? And how do you
mm,
use them? But when you really start to work out that core values are the core of your business and
yeah,
start to use them in the right way. So you look at your staff and you go, right, out of 10, score out of 10 for each core value I've got. What do I score them? And I had a client who we were talking about structure of his business, and he was trying to structure the business around this individual who he wanted to keep, and who's. And I said, look, before you start doing that, is he the right person to be structuring the business around? 6 months later, he sacked him.
wow,
So it kind of, I can't turn around to a client and go, no, you need to sack him. I just couldn't do that, but I can hint heavily
yeah,
that someone is wrong because his core values were very much around money
yeah,
and what he was getting out of it, not about the ethos of the company
yeah,
and the quality service
yeah,
and everything else. So all he had to do was get a sheet and mark him, and he scored really, really low on that sheet.
yeah,
And he kind of, I think in his gut, he knew he was the wrong person, but to have some kind of system to say, yeah, no, he's definitely the wrong person. Now, not saying that that's the end of the road for someone. You can sit down with them and
yeah,
assess it and say, look, you've scored really low in these things. How can we support you, going back to the mentoring,
yeah,
to be better?
yeah,
So that's your first port of call, but that doesn't always work.
yeah.
But it's such a fundamental, simple thing.
And it's a massive risk to the business if you get
Yeah,
that wrong.
yeah.
A bad hire can toxify the business.
Everyone around you,
Yeah,
and the amount of
including
people,
the clients. Sorry
yeah,
to cut across you.
the,
Yeah,
the people that I've met that've got rid of people that have said it just feels so much better.
yeah,
But actually, when you kind of they start thinking about it, they're going, oh, we won't survive without them.
yeah,
They're too important to the business.
yeah.
And then they go,
And they're going
and
to
they
bring
go,
the business with them and all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and they go, and everything just the whole team gels suddenly.
yeah.
That kind of one
It's kind of a
kind of
relief valve
yeah,
completely
that
off the
one out
business.
of shape cog which
Yeah,
isn't working
yeah.
is removed, and everyone else suddenly gels.
So how do you fix that problem before it becomes a problem? How, like, what is the Hayhurst principle for hiring the right people?
Ah, right. Okay. So I've been through this quite a bit, and I don't do that. Some of the stuff I teach isn't because I got it right; it's
Yeah,
because I got it wrong. Okay. So I'm not saying I had a good system for employing people when I was running my business. I didn't.
yeah,
I did exactly what lots of people did. I hired in panic.
yeah.
Okay, company's growing, need people, get them in.
Knee jerk.
Yeah. So you start with the advert. Okay, so we're in an industry where we're quite busy as an industry. There is a few people coming onto the market now because a few companies have gone bust. But how do you attract someone? We talk about what they want. You don't talk about what you want. So you start it off, do you feel valued where you are?
Brilliant.
Okay, oh, that's a great starting.
Yeah,
How many adverts have you seen? You might see a couple now because some of my clients are doing it. But how many adverts have you seen doing that? Do you want to? So do you want to work for a company that will support you to be the very best you can be?
yeah,
Now, straight away, if you're working for a construction company and you're not very happy and you don't feel valued, that advert's going to really,
Resonate with you.
yeah, going to grab you.
Yeah.
So you start with the advert, and then the interviewing process. Again, just a simple marking sheet. So I had a client who they'd made a few mistakes in getting people in, and they kind of hired and fired and hired and fired. So we went put this marking sheet, core values. It was interesting because some of the people that came over really well in interview didn't score very highly on the sheet. And some of the people didn't come over very well in interview, scored very high on the sheet, and they went with the sheet.
Yeah.
Now there's 3 people marking separately, so it's a combination of 3 people doing the same sheet. The hires they've made since have been fantastic. So if you're interviewing someone, they can be nervous.
Yeah.
It can be an off day.
Yeah.
You can get the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah.
But if you're scoring them as well, you've got that as a backup.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And so you'll never always get it 100% right.
No,
you
no,
know,
no.
and you'll always have churn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So once you, and like, it's funny that we're having this conversation because literally today I had a conversation with somebody about how owners feel an obligation to sell themselves and their business to prospective employees, when in fact you shouldn't have to sell it at all. You know, it should be, do you really want to work here? You know, do you want to work with us? Do you want to be part of what you see? And exactly what you said in terms of values, that
Yeah.
if even if you let people into your office and say, look, you know, as part of the introduction of the interview process, just go around and have a chat with some of the staff. They know you're here for an interview. You mightn't get the job, that's fine. But go and ask them, you know, do you like working here? How long are you working here? Like, it's amazing that people wouldn't even think to do stuff like that.
No, they don't, and people look at it in completely the wrong way.
They do.
Um,
I
and
think,
I,
but I think it's the formality has been driven by the recruitment industry probably as well. That, you know, well, this is the way it happens.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a great fan of agency recruitment. I think it's a difficult one, because sometimes the agencies aren't that good, and the people you get coming through aren't that good. And I think advertising yourself is a good idea,
Yeah.
but then you've got to expect a lot of rubbish to come through as well.
Yeah.
But if if you look at employing people and getting that bit right and getting them in, and understanding, but I call it branding. So branding to me isn't your logo.
Yeah.
It's what people see when they look at your business from the outside. So getting the right people can mean that, your sites look spotless,
Yeah.
that everyone's got the right gear on, that everyone looks professional. People are driving past all the time, not just clients.
Yeah.
So clients I've got, they've got that absolutely right, and I've
Yeah.
got a few. They haven't got a problem employing people because they're an aspirational company to work for.
Yeah. But the other thing, I suppose, is pay them top dollar. Pay them as much
Well,
money as you can pay them. And I think people have a fear. Would you?
they do and they don't. I mean, you've got to pay the going rate, but it's
Yeah.
not just about money. And you've really got to understand that. It's about how much you value them.
Yeah.
So if you're making money, pay the money. Yeah. But you need to pay the going rate.
Yeah.
But if someone is coming to you because you're paying them, more than someone else,
Yeah.
their core value is money. Are they the right person for you just because that's the reason they're coming to you? You want the whole package. You want
Yeah.
someone who believes in your quality, believes in your ethos of being honest, believes that they, want to put client first. All the other things, all the other core values that you might have.
Yeah.
So you want the full package. Money's important, don't get me wrong, but if it's the be all and end all,
Yeah.
it's the wrong thing.
Yeah. We often talk about paying for people's lifestyle. So the person that's coming in looking for the job is thinking to themselves, I like 2 holidays a year. I like to change the car every 2 years. And I like to have nice shiny things and nice clothes and stuff like that. And there is people out there that's their be all and that is their everything. Is that has to be looked after first. How do you characterize that in your selection process to stop that? To stop that.
Well, let's get something straight. And I'll be honest, my expertise is not in HR
It's a
and
bit of a
employing
curveball,
people.
yeah.
So it's a bit of a curveball one. But I think you've just got to understand again what's the other core values.
Yeah.
What other things they believe in? They won't understand them or know their core values. Even if you're employing a carpenter,
Yeah.
what's he believe in? So if you're asking the right questions,
Yeah.
I often like a one around honesty. So the example I use is you've got a bell box, right? And it's cracked down the back.
Okay.
Okay. So as a Sparky, it's cracked down the back. Client will never know. Do you fit it? Now, if I'm asking that to someone who I'm interviewing, what answer do I want?
Well, you obviously want, I do not fit it, and I put the best quality of work in
Do
front of
I?
it.
Or do I want them to say, well, I'm not going to waste your money by replacing the bell box? What answer do I want?
It's a brilliant scenario. It's a
Okay,
good, yeah,
so if you ask a question where they don't know what answer you want,
yeah,
but it aligns with your core values, if my core value is honesty, you know what answer I want.
yeah,
Yeah, but that might not be my core value.
yeah.
So if you ask questions that are, not black and white, that's the kind of the kind of situation where you get some real value back.
So scenario-based questions,
Yeah,
yeah, are really important, and sort of scenarios based on stuff that you've seen in your own business or you've heard or you know that
yeah.
there's sort of
And
nuances in.
again, I remake the point often from not doing it.
Yeah,
So I look at the problems I had
yeah.
and think, well, how could I solve that now?
Well, now that you bring it up, would you mind sharing, like you did have failures in your own career, like, if you're okay with just sharing that failure and how
Well,
that came about,
I
and
share it on my podcast anyway, so
yeah,
it's kind of common knowledge. But so we ran a business which was getting quite big. We'd come through the recession in 2010 with not a lot of money, so we started doing joint ventures. Um, but we grew. That made us grow quite quickly, most probably too quickly,
okay,
and we got up to about 14 million turnover. So it's just over 1 million a month, which is for a small company is quite a bit to kind of manage. Bit of hiring and panic, but also taking on work to carry on the churn without thinking about it. What happened was someone didn't pay us. Is it their fault? For the first 2 years, I was absolutely adamant it was their fault. We failed because they,
let
I
us down.
really, and
Yeah.
my thoughts, my thoughts about them were not pure. It wasn't a good thing. But after about 2 years, I kind of managed to, out of the ashes, not start another company. We had another company that I started running, doing contracting. So the other one was developer contractor. It's just contracting. But after about 2 years, I started thinking, well, hold on, I signed the bloody contract.
Yeah,
I took on the work. I employed the people.
yeah,
Whose fault was it?
yeah.
And that's the big sea change. And some people go through life and failure with never learning that lesson.
No, and me and you shared the same discussion on this because I had it not as catastrophic as yourself, but I did have somebody that, you know, didn't pay us, and it was a large sum, and you go down the personal route, and you sabotage yourself internally with trauma of lack of honor, and then you're going to say to yourself, well, it was me that actually let this
Yeah,
person into my business.
failure is really difficult. And I say, like I said this on my podcast. My father died in 21 from COVID, and it was really, really hard. And he was my best mate,
Yeah,
my mentor, my father, my
sorry for
business
that.
partner, and everything else. And I don't belittle that in any shape or form by saying that going bust was harder,
Okay,
because going bust, he'd started the company. I was running the company, and it was so difficult because I had to get up every day and try and do something to stop other people going bust. And I don't think they even knew how much effort I made
yeah,
to stop other people going bust around it. And I had to go to a creditors meeting, which I don't think you even have nowadays, but it was incredibly difficult.
yeah,
I had people turning up the front door, all that kind of scenario. But I had to get up every day and I had to carry on moving forward.
yeah,
Whereas when my father died, he was in hospital. It was during COVID. We couldn't go in and see him. I couldn't do anything.
yeah,
So, and the failure that I felt walking down my local high street, I literally felt I was going to get attacked. I mean, no one. It wasn't like that. In fact, one of my friends took me to one side and said, "You do understand that everyone doesn't think like that about you, but you don't see that."
yeah. Well, you're obviously a very passionate person, and I suppose the letdown you feel you've let yourself down, you've let your family down,
Everyone.
the shame.
The shame of it was awful. And I remember maybe 4 years ago, and this was a long time, so 2015, so 4 years ago was 2000. I started going onto LinkedIn. It was like my head went above the parapet, you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
and I thought I'm going to be trolled. Someone's going to,
Yeah.
never happened.
There you go.
Never happened. So,
Yeah.
failure is only failure. It's only negative if you don't pick yourself back up
Yeah.
and move forward. And I think, one thing I kind of learned is the difference between failure and success is you pick yourself up one more time, then you fall over.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
And don't do this stuff that brought you down in the first place.
Yeah.
Don't do it again, or at least
Well, learn from
have
it, but
barriers.
but you've got to analyze it in the right way to learn from it.
Yeah.
Because you can always. I speak to so many business owners that have failed, because most have.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, who still blame it on their partner running away with the money, or this or that or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, and someone just drained your bank account and disappeared with the money, but you didn't have put the checks and balances in place.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got this great saying: I just trust is not enough.
It's not enough.
know?
Honor is not enough.
Yeah,
No.
it's not enough. So if you trust someone implicitly, then what's the problem with putting checks and balances in place?
Yeah.
Where's the problem there?
Yeah.
Now, if there's a problem, you have a problem.
Yeah.
If someone's saying, "Well, no, I don't want you to double sign my checks. I don't want you to, do this." Why?
Yeah. Do you have a sense of the size of the company and the turnover of a company, and whether the size of the company and the turnover of the company is in sync when you're talking to these companies?
It's really difficult.
It's another
Turnover.
curveball question for you, but
Yeah. You're throwing a few at me, aren't you? Yeah, turnover. I often ask people turnover, and people say, "Oh, that's quite personal." Well, it's not actually, because I can find your turnover really easily.
Yeah.
So it's not that personal. Turnover is about one thing. It's about size. If I'm trying to gauge how big you are
Yeah.
as a company, because I'm trying to work out how I can help you, the first thing I'm going to ask is turnover. Doesn't mean you're successful.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're profitable.
Doesn't mean you're
It doesn't mean you're good at what you do.
Yeah.
It's just turnover. So it's nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to kind of also to boast about.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Turnover is vanity.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And profit is sanity.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I'm working towards now kind of giving people an indication of the size of their overheads compared to their turnover. And also, an overhead, this is fresh in my mind because this is what we were doing yesterday.
Yeah.
So, an overhead, what is an overhead? And people often get that wrong.
Yeah.
So they put some site costs in as overheads. So if your bloke's got a van that he's using to go to site and he's carrying his tools around in,
Yeah.
it's not an overhead.
Yeah.
It's actually a site cost.
Yeah.
Now, second you put it into overheads, lots of value here, by the way. Second you put it into overheads, it is diluting your profit.
Yeah.
Okay. Second you put it on site, you're making profit on it.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
that's the difference. And people go, well, yeah, but if I put all this cost on site, I'm not going to be competitive. Well, you can then reduce your profit, but you'll make that profit because all your costs are attached to the site. So if you want to be more competitive, not that I think people should compete just on price. It should be on, a combination of
stuff,
things.
Yeah.
But that's the way to look at it. But so many people get that wrong.
That is golden, what you've just said there.
But it's such a common mistake. And I was working with a company doing about £4 million turnover, and they said, "Oh yeah, we do really well for labour. We make 30% on our labour, which is good in the industry."
It's really good.
Yeah, really good. But they weren't making 30% of their labour because all their extra costs were an overhead.
Yeah.
So actually, they were making 2%.
Yeah.
And the reason they came to me in the first place was they were trying to work out where their profit was going.
Yeah.
So
Because as soon as you said 30% of a red flag straight away, there's something wrong there. That's just not industry standard by any means.
It's not, and we don't talk about profit enough. And in the workshops, people talk about profit, what markup they make.
Yeah.
Whether it's a markup or a margin.
Yeah.
And they talk about those things. You will not get very, very many places you can go and speak to other people that do what you do and will tell you what they do, how they do it.
Yeah, and look, if you're not good with numbers, that's okay. Don't just bring in that service and have that person pull the numbers together for you in a format that you can sort of like. Because I've noticed a lot of that where people uh, probably just don't have the skill set or not just generally not good with numbers, and then they just shy away from it and kind of go,
They
well,
do. Yeah. Yeah.
stick their head in the sand kind of thing.
It's stick the head in the sand, which is kind of a norm for the industry.
Yeah,
But I think that that opens another kind of subject, which is kind of getting the right professional help.
yeah,
So contracts. Now, there's certain legal terminology that we as lay people do not understand. So best endeavours. So, for instance, there's three levels of that. I know this because I made a mistake around it.
yeah,
So it's all endeavours, best endeavours, and another one I can't remember what it was. Now, a solicitor can read your contract and check through it
yeah.
and explain it to you for a few £100, right? So
Why wouldn't you?
why wouldn't you do that? Well, because lots of people think that they haven't got the expertise or the money or
Yeah,
and they won't invest in it. But that can save you tens of thousands of pounds. So there is certain terminology which is just not the way we see it as lay people.
yeah,
But it's to a solicitor who's been trained in this, he will understand that terminology and what it means. So it's around risk and quantifying risk.
yeah. We had a fantastic podcast here on the contract law, and yeah, it was like people shy away from that as well. And you should engage. Like one of the great lessons we got out of that podcast as well, one of them was, go and speak to your solicitor before you put in the tender and say, look, will you have a look over that? And, the solicitor might come back and say, wouldn't touch it. There's too many clauses in that that's going to lock you in, that's going to, and, let people make up their own mind and judgment then and say, well, look, I know I can overcome that because I've worked at this company before or whatever else.
Yeah,
And that's fine.
yeah.
We're not saying don't do it because all these tripwires, but at least have the eyes open going into the
Or
process.
go back to the client and go, no,
Yeah, take
this
it
is
out.
unfair. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
You've got to be willing to walk away from a contract.
yeah, and then people, because the contract's the one that's going to come back and bite you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's it's
yeah.
it's it's the one that's going to tear you down. Well, you're in this whether you like it or not because you've signed up to it.
Yeah. And people just think, well, I'll muddle through, I'll get through it, I'll
Yeah,
make it work. You've got to fill your pipeline so full
yeah,
that you're turning work away. If you're not at that point,
yeah,
you haven't filled your pipeline enough. And that's the other thing contractors do. They kind of get busy
yeah,
and they stop filling their pipeline. Fill your pipeline. Keep turning work away.
yeah.
But make sure you've got that kind of coming in.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you again.
Go on then. It's becoming a habit though.
It's like a bowling ring here. um, are people coming to you when it's a problem, or are people coming to you in a proactive engagement?
I get both. I would say more people are going that things aren't going right. We need to get them to go right. There's lots of people in the industry. I think coaching and mentoring is still quite new in this country. I think we had a brief conversation about in
Yeah,
America. It's a norm
yeah,
and people do it. But I do get some really nice companies. I think of one in particular that they've got a lot of things right, but they want to be better.
yeah. I love that.
And actually, me, I go in there and go, God, you're doing pretty well. Actually, you may be better than I was doing when I was running a company. What can I give to you? And
Yeah,
then you get into the nitty gritty,
yeah,
and there's so much stuff they can still do. And
yeah,
there's so much stuff they can still improve on. And that's a lovely
yeah.
thing. And they're
Great
great
dynamic.
because they're already quite dynamic. I often say to my clients, you want to be the Google of contractors. You want to be
Yeah,
a bit different, a bit wacky, a
yeah,
bit, out there. And I'm starting to meet, and I think I obviously kind of pull these people towards me. I'm
yeah,
starting to meet those kind of people.
yeah,
And it's lovely because the industry does need a change.
yeah,
And I think we need to be much more dynamic.
yeah. And as
And
well
it's
as
starting
that,
to happen.
you're creating leaders that people will look up to, like icons. Then the next Murphy's or the next whatever Ballymore type of companies. It doesn't have to be that size, but like you're having that sort of um, brand and reputation and value system that you can pass on to the next generation. And that might be just some carpenter that's passing through your company, and then 20 years' time, that person might decide to go out on their own and go, do you know what? After being with that particular company, I'm going to follow that blueprint because it served me well and it served them well.
Actually, that kind of reminds me of a little story to do with giving value and to do with helping people. Great believer in helping people.
Yeah.
My knowledge is out there for people to have. Not everyone's going to pay me for it, so I'm okay with that. That's fine. But when I was I don't know, 21, 22, I think I decided that I was going to change jobs. I was looking for a job, I think, and in those days we didn't have email.
Yeah.
I'm not that old, okay, but so I had to write about 100 letters. So I got the Federation of House Builders Federation, and wrote to all the house builders. I don't think I got a single reply to 100 letters. And it disgusted me that people couldn't even, see me as a young lad,
Yeah.
and reply to me. So I promised myself, if I got in a position where I was employing people, that I would reply to every single letter, and I would try and give some value in that reply. So I did that at quite an early age. So it must have been kind of early 2000, 2003, something like that. I got a letter from a young lad who wanted a job as a trainee plumber. And he said, that he did very many jobs, and that he was due to get 3 A levels, A star, so quite high qualifications. And I wrote back to him and said, look, we don't actually employ plumbers. We didn't. But these 2 companies you can approach. But with those kind of A level results, you could take a different career path. Construction is for you. Not that there's anything wrong with plumbing. Let me get you this.
Yeah.
But he didn't have his options. It just was to let him know those other options. And I said he could do a degree in surveying. And about a year, maybe 2 years later, our normal postman didn't turn up. This new postman turned up, and he came in, quite a large bloke, and he went, "Is Robin Hayhurst here?" I thought, "Oh God, what have I done?"
Mr. Revenue. Mr. Revenue.
Yeah. And he walked up. He said, "Yeah, I've taken this round today because I just wanted to come and meet you." I went, still didn't have a clue. And he said, "My son wrote to you 2 years ago, and you wrote him a lovely letter back, and you gave him a couple of plumbing companies and also the advice to go and do a degree. He's at Reading University now doing that degree, and he's loving it."
Wow.
So just having that
Yeah.
time to impact someone else's life.
Yeah.
I mean, that is still the feeling that I seek out when I'm coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but it's a testament to you, Robin, because you are very personable. You are very open. You're very honest, obviously, and what you're doing for the construction industry is a credit to yourself, and you're giving back, and I think you should be highly commended for it.
I'll be honest, I'm quite selfish in it, though, because I enjoy the feeling.
Yeah. You're
So,
getting something out of
yeah.
it. It is a two-way.
Yeah,
it is a
yeah.
two-way
I mean, I
thing,
really
yeah.
enjoy it. I've always said I'm a giver
Yeah.
because I enjoy that. The surprise of someone opening something that's really kind of special has always been gives me much more joy than me opening
I know what you
something.
mean.
So
So if someone wants to get in touch with you, because I'm sure there's going to be loads of people saying, I need to talk to that guy. Like, would it be, if I get in touch with you, let's set up a pre-discovery call, and then let's discuss whether it's a workshop that should be done for you or whether it's something more forensic, or how does that process work?
yeah, you can book a call through my website, which is my name. It means I can remember it. So it's www.robinhayhurst.com.
Yeah.
I chose .com because at one stage I thought we might get some Americans coming in, but
Didn't happen.
I should have had .co.uk really. But so yes, .com, or I'm on most social. It's LinkedIn with me on LinkedIn, or anywhere else really. Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok as well.
And now TikTok as well.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put the links in the description in the show notes. And I have to say, thank you very much for coming in today, Robin.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I'm delighted I was able to nail you on bringing out some value. Listen, take care, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.